All right, so we've got more AI robots dancing, singing, fighting each other, and trying to take over the world, all in PG-13. I mean, seriously, does anything sound better than that? What is up, everyone? Welcome to Mad Blood. Let me know down in the comments down below what you think about M3GAN 2.0. If you've seen it, are you a fan of this whole AI robot thing we've got going on in the horror genre? Are you kind of in the middle? Are you not a fan? Let me know. So the first M3GAN movie kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, I wasn't really expecting much after seeing the trailers for that movie, and honestly, I don't think Blumhouse was either, because they dropped that movie in what we like to call the cinema graveyard. That is the month of January. But then all of a sudden, that first M3GAN movie went on to make $180 million. And we know Blumhouse. I mean, anytime there's a chance to add like a 9th yacht to the collection, people start to get a little excited over there. Maybe that was because of the TikTok dances, or maybe that was because people just genuinely enjoyed the movie. I mean, I don't know which one sounds more absurd, but hey, you do you. I mean, I felt like that first M3GAN movie was just kind of okay. Definitely prefer the rated R version, which they came out with later, which I'm assuming they're going to do the same thing with this movie. But yeah, definitely not a horror movie that I really enjoy. And I get that I'm not really the target audience for M3GAN. But still, overall, it was just kind of an okay movie. And if you couldn't already tell, I'll just say right off the bat, this whole wave of this AI robot stuff, home technology things gone wrong in this style of a movie, kind of like the movies like Afraid, also from Blumhouse, or even Companion, a movie that I thought did have some moments that were pretty fun. But those movies, it's just not really my thing. I mean, I love me some Terminator, but yeah, it's Terminator. I mean, that is a completely different world than this shit. I just feel like these movies are so tame and so generic. And yes, pun intended, I feel like these movies just lack kind of like life to them. But hey, maybe that's the whole joke. Maybe the fact that these movies literally feel like they are written and directed by AI is a part of the whole shtick. But again, if you like these movies, I think that's cool. I mean, no shade towards you. I mean, obviously, there's quite a few people that do enjoy watching these movies, but again, you know, it's just not really my thing. All right, so back to M3GAN 2.0. So this go around, they cranked up the budget just a little bit. You know, they got rid of a lot of the horror elements that we saw in the original M3GAN. This movie is way more of an action movie, I guess you could say. And then also, they added another robot to the mix. And so basically the premise of M3GAN 2.0 is we're 2 years after the events of that first movie, and Gemma is now like this author and this advocate for the regulation of artificial intelligence. But then we find out early on that M3GAN's technology was stolen and is now being used by defense contractors to create a military robot called Amelia. And then Amelia becomes a little bit more self-aware and starts to go pretty rogue. So who else can stop Amelia than our old pal M3GAN coming back and trying to save the day? And I think the best way to talk about this movie and really get my meat hooks into this review is to talk about spoilers. So yes, guys, you have been warned. So this movie starts out with this secret mission that basically goes wrong. This is when we meet Amelia. She's supposed to capture this scientist and then continue the mission. And like I mentioned just a second ago, she basically starts making her own decisions. She kills this scientist. Everybody is kind of freaking out. And right here is when this movie, it's very, very early on in the movie, is basically a fork in the road for how this movie is going to go. It's pretty clear to me. It could either go this way, where it's like, gonna go very satirical, very funny, just a full-blown horror comedy. Or it can go right in the middle and just basically be bland, not really lean into the horror, not really lean into the comedy side, you know, not really just leaning into anything in particular. Or it could lean into being a very like gritty AI robot movie where we're watching this journey of these things trying to do some dark shit to humanity. There's a few different routes early on where this movie can go. And that's when the production decided, you know what? I'll take what's behind door number 2, Bob Barker. let's make the tone of this movie like a little trickle of comedy. You know, maybe throw out some bland jokes, throw in some random vagina words along the way. You know, have some kills also along the way, just a little bit here and there, but never enough to really offend anyone. And also just make it feel about as lifeless as the robots that our main characters cry about at the end of this movie. So, yay, can't wait. And before I get more into this review, I gotta say, just the fact that I mustered up the sheer will to get through 2 hours of this movie. Yes, I said 2 hours. I mean, if there's any movie on this planet that should be 90 minutes, it is an AI robot PG-13 horror movie. But anyways, on top of watching this movie for 2 hours, also getting off my ass and getting dressed, then filming and editing this review, I mean, David Goggins ain't got nothing on me. And don't get me wrong, I like Allison Williams. I think she's great. I don't really have a problem with her being in this franchise, but they are starting to make her character in this movie completely insufferable. Now, on one hand, she's about the only character in this movie that actually feels like a real human making real, actual decisions. Yet, on the other hand, they make her this AI activist lady, yet she's sitting here inventing these like robotic human suits that anyone with half a brain and a little bit of common sense would know that this stuff is eventually going to be used for some horrible stuff. So anyways, how does Gemma even get mixed up in this entire movie to begin with? Well, to create some cohesiveness between M3GAN and M3GAN 2.0, Gemma now has the FBI on her tail because the FBI thinks it's possible, I mean, pretty likely that Gemma is the one that sold M3GAN's technology for this Amelia robot. You know, she sold it to the Russians or something like that. There's also some things that's kind of like, wait, you work for a nonprofit? How are you able to afford this nice house, this nice car, all that stuff? But that's kind of a tangent for another day with nonprofits. But still, that's how she gets roped up into this because the FBI is essentially investigating her. And now I get that this movie is supposed to be a silly horror comedy in a lot of ways. Now I say comedy probably in quotation marks because obviously that's very subjective, especially with this movie, but the FBI in this movie is completely absurd throughout the entire movie. And they also have that moment where the FBI is going into Gemma's and Katie's house to try to like wiretap them, and then they go the route like The Last of Us where Katie whoops this agent's ass, and they just give us the excuse of, well, you know, yeah, she's like 100 pounds, but she's been training. Okay. And as this movie goes along, it eventually gets to this point where Amelia, this new robot, is heading towards this Xerox type place's headquarters because within their bunker, they tell us it's hidden. They have this like black box AI technology, which is revealed to be basically the first type of artificial intelligence that did end up, you know, going kind of rogue and ended up killing some humans along the way. And if it's unleashed, it would basically wipe out humanity and our modern society in essentially just a matter of days. And now Gemma and Katie are kind of stuck with this whole predicament of what do we do? How do we help the FBI stop this whole thing? Well, we know it is now time to bring back M3GAN, who apparently hasn't gone away for good after everything we saw at the end of that first movie. She's still around. She's still living within all of the technology in Gemma and Katie's house for basically the last 2 years, and she's just been chilling. She didn't want to show herself, I guess. Oh yeah, and it's also revealed in this movie that M3GAN has not only been alive kind of this entire time, but also has built like an entire bunker underneath Gemma and Katie's house somehow. I guess with what construction crew? Nobody asked about the noise or what was going on. Nobody asked questions about any weird deliveries or anything else happening. Okay, kind of strange. And just to further hit home the cliches and how generic this movie is at this moment where they're eventually like, all right, fine. We'll bring back M3GAN after all these speeches about the bad stuff that she did and all the other kind of bad things that could potentially happen. What do? We kick in the upbeat, happy music, and then we get a nice little time lapse of bringing M3GAN back. And of course, it's going to be better than ever, which, yeah, very believable because we're now in a bunker. They're not in their normal place, what they can normally do, their robotics that they're used to doing. Oh yeah, on top of that, they're gonna make M3GAN better than ever with cutting edge robotic technology in what seems like 30 minutes. And as M3GAN 2.0 is going on, I was kind of thinking to myself, the original M3GAN definitely had a niche for itself, and I could see what its niche was. It was clearly a horror movie, but it was made for a younger audience, right? It was made to kind of be an entry-level PG-13 type of a horror movie. Definitely had some dark elements to it, but not too much. And with the original M3GAN movie, I could see like, yeah, this is definitely a movie I could see teenagers enjoying, and definitely kind of, like I said, being an entry-level type of a movie to the genre. But with M3GAN 2.0, I feel like this movie isn't even a movie made for teenagers, other than the gore that they just randomly trickle in throughout some parts of the movie, especially at the end of the movie. I feel like this movie is made for 8-year-olds. It just feels like an 8-year-old action movie with, like I said, just some random gore thrown in at certain points later on in the movie. I mean, we get lines like this when M3GAN is accidentally up on stage at this event. There's humans next to her that are dressed up like robots as well. They're kind of dancing, they're entertaining the crowd. M3GAN finds herself, like I said, accidentally up on the stage, and then right before kind of the spotlight is on M3GAN, which will kind of blow her cover, Gemma is like, get down, and then the spotlight ends up going on her, and she's like, shit, what do I do now? And Katie's like, you heard, Gemma, get down. And then she starts dancing and all of that. Guys, I mean, it is painful. And yes, that scene is very, very painful, but probably nowhere near as painful as the moment we get a little bit later on in the movie when Gemma is basically like pouring out her heart and soul to M3GAN about her struggles being Katie's kind of like parent. And then M3GAN lectures her about parenthood and then goes into a solo a cappella song that carries on way longer than it possibly should. I mean, I am just at that point, I'm like, guys, please make it stop. And honestly, right about the 90-minute mark, all I could think about other than possibly leaving the theater because I was pretty hungry was, please, don't make us sit through just a generic robot battle at the end of this movie. Like, please, by the grace of something out there, come up with something unique. Something that is not generic and predictable, like what I think is about to come at the end of this movie. And nope, they go the completely generic and predictable route, and we have to watch M3GAN battle Amelia at the end of this movie. And yes, there is a little sleight of hand sort of reveal at the end of this movie. Gemma's love interest or friend or whatever the hell you want to call them. I mean, I don't think they even really make it clear in this movie at all. I think his name is like Christian. They call him throughout the movie. But anyways, it's revealed that this guy is actually the bad guy. Very unpredictable, right, guys? We never saw that coming at all. And by the way, that guy also seems like he's AI or something. He doesn't seem real. Not necessarily like a horrible actor, but there's just something about him that just feels a little bit off. But I mean, really though, it's just like a textbook reveal that I could care less about. Now, I do technically think that this movie does actually look pretty solid. I think with the digital effects and the animatronics and all of that, I actually think they did a pretty damn good job with that, especially at this budget that this movie was made. But at that same time, it feels like such a waste on just like this hollow, lifeless story. And yes, at the end of this movie, we do get two just horribly awkward speeches that literally made me want to just crawl out of my own skin and get out of the movie theater. We first get when the villain is holding Katie over the railing and Gemma is like yelling at him to try to like freeze him for a second. And it's clearly like a cryptic speech to try to, you know, subtly tell Katie to do something to get out of that situation. Just so awkward. Then we also get the whole speech of, no, M3GAN, don't do it. I know you're a horrible murdering robot who has slaughtered the elderly and also children in that original movie, but please don't leave us. And then M3GAN gives us the line of like, yes, I have to. I'm doing it because it's right. Guys, It is so brutal. There are also so many unnecessary fake outs in this movie with Megan and Amelia specifically. It's like one moment you're like, they're dead. Oh, no, they're not dead. Yeah, they're dead. No, they're not dead. And then, oh, they're evil. Wait, they're not evil. What's going on? Yeah, they're evil again. It's just like, guys, you're literally giving me a headache. Please. Can we just relax? And yes, at the end of this movie, they defeat the bad and the good wins in the end. And yes, they also leave open the possibility for a sequel. And with that said, there is a movie coming out that's kind of a spin-off of this movie, of this franchise called Soulmate, which is supposed to be more of a thriller. It's R-rated. It's supposed to be, well, it kind of seems like it's going to be a little bit more gritty. You know, honestly, I'll probably go and see that movie and just check it out. But yes, this whole PG-13 M3GAN 2.0 experience, like I said earlier, guys, it's just not for me. And again, if you enjoyed M3GAN 2.0, hell, if you enjoyed the original M3GAN, which sad to say, I think is a much better movie than M3GAN 2.0, but more power to you. I think that's cool. Like, hey, no shade towards you. But for me, M3GAN 2.0, I thought was an absolute waste of money. And honestly, if I'm being honest, I feel like this movie is an abomination to the movie industry. And now on one hand, a movie like M3GAN 2.0 honestly just makes me appreciate those movies that we get to watch where you can genuinely feel like there's such a love for filmmaking and storytelling behind them. A movie like this just makes me appreciate those more. And also on the other hand, I know with a movie like this, there's so many regular folk who worked so hard on this movie. You know, the late nights, the long hours, blood, sweat, and tears, who, like I said, are just regular folk just trying to make it in this industry, trying to pay their bills and all of that. And I just want to say, I appreciate you because, like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of things in this movie, especially at this budget range, that I do think looks pretty impressive. But with that said, I feel like this type of a story, this type of a concept, this feeling of being a cash grabby type of a movie, honestly, is kind of an embarrassment to the film industry. And if I was in charge of making this type of a movie, I would honestly be embarrassed to talk about unless pretty much every sentence of me talking about this movie ended with something like, well, you know, it was a good paycheck, right? And yeah, you got to keep food on the table and all of that. So yeah, if you couldn't already tell, I really do think M3GAN 2.0 is a truly just horrible movie. I mean, it's one of the only movies I can think of in recent memory where I really did want to walk out of the movie. I mean, if I didn't have a YouTube channel, if I wasn't planning on doing a review of this movie, I probably would have. I would have just walked over or drove over to In-N-Out or something like that because like I mentioned a second ago, I was getting pretty hungry, but a truly soulless, generic, just really bad movie. But again, if you enjoyed M3GAN 2.0, no shade towards you. I think that's cool because, of course, this is just my opinion. It doesn't have to be your opinion. But anyways, guys, I'm not going to do my normal outro and all of that. Thanks so much for watching, though. Hope you all have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you later.